Peter Hartcher, the Prime Minister, is talking about jobs, jobs and jobs. Is there substantial policy reform behind this rhetoric, or is it more political positioning?
Well, there's one piece. There are two things that he's particularly emphasised today, and this is the territory that he wants to take the national conversation to. One of those is substantive, and that is he is urging Labor and the unions to allow the China Free Trade Agreement to be ratified. Substantive reform, the free trade agreements that Andrew Robb has brought off are serious, they are significant, they're important long-term reforms. The government is right to try to salvage the China deal and to get it through the Parliament. It needs to do that in the next couple of months. The second one is a manufactured argument, and that is the argument over the Adani coal mine and what the government is calling extreme green lawfare. The Adani coal mine was rejected because of a process error by the Minister for the Environment, Greg Hunt, which Hunt has admitted and he's trying to fix, and the application will then be approved. What Abbott has done is now created a manufactured argument about the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Act to try and pick a fight with Labor. Part one is important, part two is a manufactured issue. Overall, the government still lacks a serious economic rejuvenation program. We're going to see a summit in Sydney next week by a bunch of industry and other groups to try to put some spine and some substance into the government's reform agenda, because it doesn't have one.
Now, this attempt to wedge Labor on the EPBC Act, the Environmental Protection Act, how likely is it that this will work politically?
Well, it was absolutely exposed by the Prime Minister in his own words this morning as just that, an attempt to wedge Labor, when he said, he was asked, what about the crossbenchers? Have you talked to them about their opinion on this? And he said, this isn't a matter for the crossbenchers, this is an issue for the Labor Party. It's all about Labor, all about picking a fight. The emphasis is on the fight, not the amendment.
Here's the government choosing to fight on the environment and jobs. Is it necessarily safe ground for the Prime Minister?
Not necessarily, because it depends on how he handles it. But broadly speaking, yes, that's right. He's trading on sort of echoic memory of the Australian public with brand association. So, yes, the Liberals, they're supposed to be good with economic management. So if he's talking about economic management, that's a plus point for him. So in general, it's right. And in general, we see him acting out the conventional political wisdom of talking about issues that are supposed to be Liberal friendly.
Now, it's a difficult time for the government and the Prime Minister. The Canning by-election is coming up in September. How important for that is that for Tony Abbott and the government?
It's become the test now of Abbott's tenure as Prime Minister. Yesterday we saw a dramatic and very hasty rewriting of the benchmark of success here. We heard people saying, well, the news poll shows a 10% swing against the government in the seat of Canning, a seat with an 11 and a bit % margin. But a 5% or so of that would be Don Randall's, a personal margin, so you're going to lose that 5% anyway. And then if it's only another 5% swing against the government, that's not such a terrible thing. So suddenly they're defining 10% as success. To lose the seat is unlikely, but possible. But I would suggest to you that a 10% swing against the government, if uniformly replicated, would be disastrous, and there'll be backbenchers across the government who will be in a state of considerable fear and anxiety if there's anything close to a 10% swing against the government.
So what would be the measure of success if we assume that there's likely to be some swing against the government? What's a reasonable result for Tony Abbott?
Well, the average swing against a government in a by-election is in the 3 to 5% range. You would expect that would be natural and normal. Anything between, anything around the 10% level is extraordinary and dangerous and very difficult. But it's not as if you're looking at a Prime Minister who goes into this from a position of strength, Chris. This is a Prime Minister the support for whom has already dropped out of the party. There's no vote, there's no outbreak of obvious ill discipline, there's no revolt. But if you talk to Liberal MPs around this building, there's a despondency and there's now a lack of faith and confidence that this is a Prime Minister who can carry them to the next election and win. The Canning by-election is the next likely manifestation of the Prime Minister's inability to win, and so that's why it's so dangerous for him.
Okay, Peter Hartcher, thank you.
Pleasure, Chris.